18-year-old Teslyn Russell was found dead in her family's home on December 30th.
A Trinity couple allegedly shooting up heroin in their daughter's hospital room this morning.
A deadly combination of heroin and animal tranquilizer is killing people in the tri-state.
The use of heroin is running rampant in our communities. Parents are burying their children and are doing so at an alarming rate.
Henry Hagerty. I'm a recovering alcoholic and pothead, and a lacrosse coach.
My name's Isaac Waters. I'm a student at the College of Charleston. I'm a sophomore. I'm a small business owner, so do that as well.
Jason Sandoval, resident agent in charge of DEA in Charleston, South Carolina.
I am Bruce Howe Hendricks, and I'm a federal judge for the District of South Carolina.
Do you know what drugs do to you? They shrink your brain until one day you wake up and you think you're Superman and you can fly, and then you wind up jumping off the roof in your underpants.
I was 16 when I really started to become like an everyday user. By 17, I was a full-blown drug addict. So it was pretty quick.
I believe that I'm one of the genetically predisposed ones. When I was 13, I got drunk for the first time. The very first time I blacked out, threw up, and got in trouble. And that pretty much happened every time I ever drank. So I'm a binge drinker. That's what I was. And hopefully will remain recovered from. Which means that I didn't drink all the time or do drugs all the time. But when I started, I couldn't stop.
When I say diseased people, drug addiction is a disease of the mind. For addicts of heroin, for example, the heroin rewires their brain and the priority system in their brain to tell them that they only have one priority in life, and that's to get high. All other priorities, school, family, church, sports, they're no longer priorities. They no longer have the same meaning and the same value that they once did before the addiction changed the structure of their brain.
It was extremely disrespectful. And I say disrespectful, it's just respect and love are the two biggest things in our family. You know, respect to yourself, to others, and how he was not him.
When I started, I became evasive. I was super non-confrontational when it was my problem, but I wanted to show everyone else their problems. I just isolated myself from my family and started lying a lot, and really just sneaky, sketchy behavior is what it was.
Sleeping with women I wasn't attracted to. Obsessing about the next time I'd get drunk or stoned. Just acting irrationally.
I think that, you know, anytime that a young adult is pulling away from their family, it's like a sign of that something is wrong. You know, a lot of people say it's like teenage angst and things like that, but a lot of the times, like, there's something else hiding underneath the teenage angst that just manifests, and it's easy to call something like that.
Nerve cells communicate by releasing specific molecules that hit a nearby nerve cell and modulate the signaling activity of this cell. In this analogy, your brain is like a pinball machine. The pinballs represent molecules that are being sent to hit the nerve cells. The nerve cells are represented by the bells. When the pinballs hit the bells, you're happy because you get points. This reflects dopamine molecules hitting nerve cells that give you good emotions. Dopamine is then being created and sent to the nerve cells. The natural dopamine that was created by your brain then hits the nerve cells, causing an exotic sensation. The green button represents heroin. Pressing the button releases more pinballs, causing the bells to get hit more frequently, leading to an eccentric sensation. When you shoot up heroin, it releases more dopamine that hits the nerve cells with more ferocity. You then become so obsessed with the high that you can't stop. More and more pinballs are released into the game, and you are constantly trying to chase that first sensation. As you can see, an abundance of dopamine molecules are being released and are hitting the nerve cells, causing more of a reaction. However, the nerve cells can only handle so much. With the dopamine molecules hitting them at such a repetitive ferocity, the nerve cells and brain structure are being destroyed. In the end, your brain and body are worn out. This is where depression comes from. The natural dopamine that the brain creates is non-existent because the nerve cells are destroyed. The only thing to get better is to shoot up more heroin to get aesthetic dopamine. But even that isn't enough anymore.
I would say that I would compare my addiction to being possessed by demons, literally. Now, not someone with a horn in their head, but I would say that being addicted is being possessed by the demons in my mind. I think that all of us have a dark side and a light side. I think my dark side wants me to kill myself. And I see a lot of that in the programs I'm in. And I have to decide who I'm going to listen to, that or the light side. So I compare it to being possessed because it's as if something takes me over and says, okay, now that I've got you not feeling the pain, let's just finish the job. It's that scary.
The best that I can compare it to is just like this rat spinning in a cage. It's this constant work to stay in the same place.
Being addicted to opiates is like chasing a dragon. You're constantly seeking that first high. But what's going to happen if you actually catch it?
They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no. Yes, I've been black, but when I come back, no, no, no.
These marks, all these right here, these are all old. All these ones are all new. All the way up here, on this leg, down this leg here, all my whole legs, everything. Those are the new ones. It's pretty bad addiction. I don't even get high anymore. I just do it so I can feel normal. I'm starting to get withdrawals and it's starting to take effect now since I haven't used in almost 12 hours. You start getting cold, hot. Start sneezing a lot, nose starts running, vomiting. You can't get comfortable. Imagine being physically sick with the flu, just where you don't want to move. Your bones ache, your body aches, your stomach hurts. You just feel like throwing up. You just drained of everything physically. And that's what I'm gonna start going through. I'm scared, let's be honest.
Sometimes we'd see that sometimes there would be cases as a prosecutor where you'd see that the person was really just selling drugs to satisfy their own addiction, to get money, or drugs to feed their own addiction, and if they weren't really more criminal-minded kind of people or dangerous to anyone but themselves, that it was apparent to me that we needed to find a way to resolve those cases and help the defendants actually recover rather than just putting them in jail so that they didn't recover. We did not have those options back when I was a prosecutor. There was no drug court program, so people charged with offenses that were addicted but weren't really dangerous type people had to go to jail and really didn't get sufficient drug treatment.
What I see with people getting hooked is a misconception that's been portrayed a lot in the media, portrayed a lot in legalization and deregulation narratives, that DEA and narcotics police in state and local departments target addicts, and that is simply not true. The issue with people who get addicted to drugs, whenever they're driven to feed their addiction, they only have a couple of options once they've tapped out all their family resources and personal resources. And usually those options revolve around some type of criminal conduct: prostitution, theft, bank robberies, or drug dealing.
As early as my late teens, I remember getting on my knees, having weed and alcohol, saying, God, I don't want to do this anymore. Saying a prayer. Like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Early on. What do you think I did? I smoked the weed, drank the, you know, I knew that something was off.
They often join drug trafficking or drug dealing groups to feed their own addiction, and it's when they enter that part of the equation of becoming drug dealers themselves to feed their addiction where DEA and narcotics police really have no choice, because they are breaking the law as drug dealers. And that's where the narrative of DEA targets drug dealers, I think, has been sort of founded, but it's only founded partially on the truth. The fact of the matter is, we don't want to arrest addicts. Addicts are diseased people who deserve the kind of care that they deserve to get themselves in recovery, but they also need to get that help before they start committing criminal acts that would then subject them to parts of the legal system they otherwise wouldn't have faced had they not been addicted.
I didn't go to rehab. I walked into Pitt and Queen. I was one of the lucky ones. I'm a one-chip wonder so far. Which means I picked up one chip, I didn't relapse. And I think I didn't go to rehab, even though siblings had offered it, because I was just so tired, I was ready. And so I went right into 90 and 90 meetings in 90 days. I was going between here and New York. I was dialing it up. And I was just tired. And very slowly I was like, oh, I'm waking up without a hangover. Oh, you know, waking up with lots of emotions that hadn't been around for a while. The first part of, whether you're in rehab or not, the first part of sobriety is pretty tough, because, you know, I had someone I was talking to today, and he's like, I'm getting depressed, I'm ecstatic, I'm depressed, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm this. And I'm like, those are called emotions. Those are the things you medicated away from for years. So they never left. Now they're going to come out. Now they're going to gas off. So for me, those early days in sobriety, which is, I guess, like rehab, were trying to clear my head, shake off the fog, and just stop thinking so much.
I've been to 6 different treatment facilities, so I wish I could say that like I went to one and I got sober and my life got better. But when I was kicked out of high school, my parents gave me an option of 3 different places to go, and there is a lack of kind of resources for kids that are under 18, like trying to get sober, because that was like for so long you weren't a drug addict if you were under 18. You kind of had oppositional defiance disorder, or you had anxiety disorder, or you just had some type of disorder. It wasn't drug addiction at that point. So I got sent to this wilderness program, is what they like to call them. It was a boot camp. We were made to wear orange jumpsuits. We had to march in line. And they didn't talk a lot about drug addiction. They talked a lot about therapy once a week. And I can remember I identified as a drug addict there, and they said, well, we don't really have any resources for you here. You know, this is therapy. We're trying to break you down so that we can build you back up into a new man. And I think I turned 18 in that facility, and I think when you're 18 years old, it's impossible to break someone down to build them back up. Like, you're just not gonna get down to the root causes and conditions of something like that and rebuild a person as they're entering their adult life. But I did an intensive like residential treatment program in Jacksonville, Florida one time, and I was in there for I think 56 days, and I checked out of there and did a halfway house in Jacksonville, Florida for 2 months, and then I moved home and relapsed right after that, and then I went, I think like 4 months later, to Talbot Recovery Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was in an adolescent program there. It was 40 guys between the ages of 18 and 25. I was 19 at the time. So that's when I got sober, is when I did that.
Now, those 3+ years I was so proud of, and I threw them all away for 2 styrofoam cups. The irony, everyone will think that he lied to me. Made my sobriety so public, there's no fucking privacy. If I don't talk about it, then I carry a date. A 08-10-08, then now it's been changed. And everyone that put me in some box is saying that I never was. It's the false prophet that never came. And will they think that everything that I've written is all been...
I don't agree with that. I'm not sure whoever McCain is, but I don't agree with that. There's no recovery without helping others. I do know of people that have many years of sobriety that don't go to meetings anymore, and I'm sort of sad for them. What we don't talk about that's in AA that people don't realize is that you finish growing up. If you stop developing back here, how are you going to catch up with the rest of the world? How are you going to become a man or a woman? And I am doing that by helping others.
I think that's probably the case. And again, I'm not a doctor or a therapist or a drug treatment expert. This is just based on observations as a lawyer and as now as a judge. I believe he is correct about that. And so we do in our program, we understand that relapse is part of the disease of addiction, and we make space for that. I don't think anybody can be fully successful and engaged long-term in recovery without having tried to start and then maybe had a little bit of difficulty, but before they got fully engaged.
No, I don't agree with that. Edward McCain actually went to the same facility that I did. So I've heard him tell this story on several different occasions. People told me that in that boot camp style treatment facility, they said that relapse is a part of recovery. And when I heard that, that's what I latched onto. It was like, if relapse is a part of recovery, like I have to go relapse. He's telling me that I have to if I want to truly recover. But I think that the way that I define sobriety is complete abstinence from mood and mind-altering substances. So that if you're trying to maintain complete abstinence from mood and mind-altering substances, there's no like gray area there. So I don't think that one has to relapse to recover. I know plenty of people that have like gotten sober and stayed sober. So I don't think that one necessarily has to do that. I think it's a pretty common. It makes some people feel better about relapse. I've relapsed several times. I wish that, it wasn't a part of my story. My life would have been a lot easier. But the truth is that it's not necessary. Some people can just like hit their bottom, come in, get sober, and I've seen it countless times.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but I would like to say that anytime somebody attempts recovery, goes in and has the wherewithal to do it, they deserve to be applauded. And that statement almost sounds like we're hoping for a relapse, and I don't ever want people to relapse. I want people to be successful in trying to get themselves clean. In fact, it's my goal to see people never try it in the first place, so we don't have to have this discussion 100 years from now.
Professor Alexander explained to me, the idea of addiction we've all got in our heads, that story, comes partly from a series of experiments that were done earlier in the 20th century. They're really simple experiments. You can do them tonight when you go home if you feel a little bit sadistic. You get a rat and you put it in a cage, and you give it 2 water bottles. One is just water, and the other is water laced with either heroin or cocaine. If you do that, the rat will almost always prefer the drugged water and almost always kill itself quite quickly. So there you go, right? That's how we think it works. In the 70s, Professor Alexander comes along and he looks at this experiment and he noticed something. He said, we're putting the rat in an empty cage. It's got nothing to do except use these drugs. Let's try something a bit different. So Professor Alexander built a cage that he called Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats, right? They've got loads of cheese, they've got loads of colored balls, they've got loads of tunnels. Crucially, they've got loads of friends, they can have loads of sex, and they've got both the water bottles, the normal water and the drugged water. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, they don't like the drugged water. They almost never use it. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. You go from almost 100% overdose when they're isolated to 0% overdose when they have happy and connected lives. Now, when he first saw this, Professor Alexander thought, maybe this is just a thing about rats. They're quite different to us. Maybe not as different as we'd like, but But fortunately, there was a human experiment into the exact same principle happening at the exact same time. It was called the Vietnam War. In Vietnam, 20% of all American troops were using loads of heroin. And if you look at the news reports from the time, they were really worried because they thought, my God, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war ends. It made total sense. Now, those soldiers who were using loads of heroin were followed home. The Archives of General Psychiatry did a really detailed study, and what happened to them? It turns out they didn't go to rehab. They didn't go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped. Now, if you believe the story about chemical hooks, that makes absolutely no sense. But Professor Alexander began to think there might be a different story about addiction. He said, what if addiction isn't about your chemical hooks? What if addiction is about your cage? What if addiction is an adaptation to your environment? Looking at this, there was another professor called Peter Cohen in the Netherlands who said, maybe we shouldn't even call it addiction. Maybe we should call it bonding. Human beings have a natural and innate need to bond. And when we're happy and healthy, we'll bond and connect with each other. But if you can't do that because you're traumatized or isolated or beaten down by life, you will bond with something that will give you some sense of relief. Now, that might be gambling, that might be pornography, that might be cocaine, that might be cannabis, but you will bond and connect with something because that's our nature. That's what we want as human beings.
New lifestyles, and you just see, it's amazing to see the difference between the day that they're first brought in, they're arrested by the authorities, by the police or the federal authorities for a crime, and they come in and they have to go through the booking process at the U.S. Marshals. And we have their photos that we keep from that day that they first come in. And then when you look at the way they look, once the recovery process starts, you see a tremendous difference in their whole affect, but then the ones that graduate, I mean, they just look like totally different people.
It's completely possible. I've seen it happen in thousands of other people, and I've seen it happen in myself. I can remember feeling so hopeless and kind of being like kind of doomed, you know. I was kind of doomed in the aspect that like my life wasn't going anywhere. If I continued on that behavior, it wasn't going to go anywhere. And I thought that if I got sober, that all the fun was going to stop, you know, that there's no fun without frat parties, and you know, that's just like what fun is here in the South. And I have come into this new way of life that I've been like truly blessed with better friends than I've ever had, and more assets than I've ever had, and more fun than I've ever had in my entire life since I got sober. You know, I've done the music venues, or the music festivals. I've done it all. I've traveled the world. I went to Asia over the summer, you know. So all these things that I kind of wanted to do while I was getting messed up but weren't an option, I've been able to fulfill all my dreams since I got sober. So they told me that if you get and stay sober young, that all your dreams would come true, and that dreams happen here. And I didn't really believe them when they told me that, because I was still so broken. But as I can look back, you know, I haven't had a drink since 2013, so I can look back and be like, wow, like they were right.
They're happier looking, they're healthy, they understand that being busy and doing these things is good for them, and that they have to keep busy, they have to stay engaged in recovery. And most of them that really succeed are the ones that really stay engaged with the recovery community, whichever group that they choose to align with, whether it be Favor or AA or Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. Those that succeed really get engaged with those groups, and they stay engaged, and they want to stay engaged for the rest of their lives. And they often will come back to the Bridge program for court sessions. We require them to come back for a couple of months after they graduate, but we have them coming back years later on their own, wanting to help and help each other. It becomes kind of like a support group, like you have with AA, NA, or Favor. Bridge becomes a sort of support group like that, and they all come back to help and support each other and inspire each other to get through the process, because on the other side of it, one reason that drug courts work is because there's the chance that they may have to go to prison if they don't.
People that are prone, the people that I've met throughout the years that try and get sober, and some that don't make it and some that do, are tortured by loneliness. That's not my words, that comes from a 12-step program. They're tortured by loneliness, they don't know what normal is, they're in a lot of pain, and a lot of times they get addicted to not feeling pain. It's not about the big party time. It's just that they don't want to feel all those feelings. They're overwhelming.
In conclusion, my research has shown that there is a fluctuation in behavior when a person is going through addiction, rehabilitation, and relapse. I also found that there is much more behind an addiction than just a chemical imbalance in the brain. Not only does the destruction of nerve cells affect the person's recovery, but so does the environment in which that person lives. Addiction is faceless, and as you come to the end of this video, pictures of people who have lost their lives to this disease will flash across your screen.
Oh girl, this boat is sinking. There's no sea left for me. And how the sky gets heavy when you are underneath it. Oh, I want to sail away from here. And God, He came down, 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 and sailed down, 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 nothing down, 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 down. He rolled up, asked him what he was sipping on. Said lean. You wanna hit it, dog? That's the same stuff Wheezy sipping, huh? And tons of other rappers that be spitting hard. Yeah, he had 5 a bone. Then when I passed him that styrofoam, the Easter pink heard it rhyme before I finally got to see what all the hype was on. And then he took a sip, sitting in the Lincoln, thinking he was pippin' as he listened to the system. Little did he know that it was just as addictive as bass, not the kind of hit from the kick drum. Hot box, let the bass bump. Take it to the face, gold. Months later the use went up, and every blunt was accompanied by the pink stuff. But goddamn, glove that feeling, purple rain coated in the throat, just so healing. Medicine alleviate the sickness, liquid to fix them, it comes with the cost. Wake up, cold sweat, scratching, itching, trying to skate the skin that barely fit him. Gone, get another bottle just to get a couple swallows, headed towards the bottom, couldn't get off it. Didn't even think he had a problem, though we couldn't sleep without getting nauseous. Room spinning, thinking he might have sipped just a little bit too much of that cough syrup. His eyelids closed shut, sat back in the chair clutching that cup. Girlfriend came in a couple hours later, said his name shook him, but he never got up. He never got up, never got up. We live on the cusp of death, thinking that it won't be us. It won't be us. It won't be us. It won't be us, nah, it won't be us.
Oh girl, this boat is sinking. There's no sea left for me. And how the sky gets heavy when you are underneath it. Oh, I want to say